All right, click links to my channel here over at SubScribestar. So anime is popular in the West, perhaps you've noticed, and growing because Japan is safe and it's an ideal society. And a lot of it is that it's the way that the West used to be. So people are leaving Western pop culture behind because it's, well, cringe for short, and finding foreign stories are much more organic. And the title here is the interviews a director and says, well, they're tired of Disney style predictable harmony in animation, which is probably part of the translation issues. So the Japanese director was asked why anime is getting so popular in the West, and part of his answer is the cookie cutter woke Disney model for America doesn't entertain, and he refers to it as formulaic, which is sort of close, but I don't think he understands the woke culture war or why Disney is doing what they're doing. So he just says it's formulaic. It's like things don't translate from Japan to the West. It's like these big, broad concepts, and it's as good as you'll get to an understanding without living there. It is formulaic, but it's formula that pushes far left wing agenda, which a Japanese director is just not going to be as familiar with what Western propaganda is like, or the lay of the land for Western good thing. Japan has its own PC type of things, but it just hits on different notes. So he assumes Disney has some reason for a method to their madness. Yes, but they're making stories that the audience doesn't want to see to promote a far left-wing agenda. We just use woke as a shorthand, which still triggers the left wing. And you'd think when people know that something triggers you, eventually they learn and they stop responding to it. But the left still gets triggered by a lot of weird stuff. So anime and manga isn't just successful. That's like that. You don't understand the comparison. It blows the doors off of anything coming from the West. Compare the American comic book industry, or what used to be the American industry, Marvel, DC, Image, and Dark Horse, and whatnot, to the Japanese, and I think it was like one Japanese comic outsold the entire American industry or something, and for good reason. Because American comics are just openly communist propaganda, and people just slowly stop buying them. The West, if they wanted to, for sure, could make anime and manga. They can do anything they want. They have all the infrastructures in place, and they can make good stories and movies as well, but they don't, because the difference between Japan and the West are, well, the rules of political correctness. And I was going to say unwritten rules, part of some social contract, but a lot of the time this stuff is written down pretty clearly with like Bechtel tests for women, or for Browns talking, or for LGBT, all these kind of stuff. There's like a checklist in Hollywood. It's like, well, isn't that literally the definition of propaganda? If you have to meet these checklists to be eligible for awards, and awards, help your movies. It's like that's the definition of propaganda. So the left-wing Mary Sue type of media openly praise diversity in stories as the reason they like it, or they claim to like it. And maybe there's a few Mary Sue types who legitimately do like this kind of stuff. They don't praise the story or the characters, but they literally focus on the propaganda. And while my girl Leishman over there claims to love it, the issue is the left claims to enjoy race swap, brown character, feminist nonsense in everything, but they don't actually go support this stuff. So the point I was focused on was at the end of this article, because he said something brutally honest, but I don't think he understood the reason for it, and the deeper meanings behind it. And when I got to the last paragraph, I laughed, because it's an awesome part of Asians when they're politically incorrect and they don't know it, and most of the time they don't care. He was talking about the difference between, I think, France and Japan, for one little example, and that the Japanese kids walk to school, and in France the parents take the kids to school. Gosh, Mr. Director, can you tell me why that is? Is there, you have any reason for that? It's like he said something without even thinking about what's going on before that. Because the French and Europeans used to have their kids just walk to school, like Japan does right now. But over the years, things have gotten too dangerous for kids to still do that in the West, while it's still safe in Japan, at least for now, in certain districts. But that, Japan is changing too. Japan is going the way of the West. And if anyone awakens and decides to decides to throw off globalism for good. Japan's up there on the possibilities, Ireland as well. If they decide to, you know what, maybe we'll just make these countries safe again and change the demographics. Anyway, people are not tired of Disney animation and the techniques they're using. It doesn't have much to do with it. And they're saying like the production's not as detailed as Japan. Okay, well that visually things matter, but storyline matters much more than anything else. It's because of the content of the stories, and they see Japan making great stories that are impossible to make in the West, even if they don't. Like as a Westerner, you're not going to understand the Japanese nuances and the story perfectly. But then you look at the Western stories, like these are not. It's Ms. Marvel and Captain Marvel and the Falcon, Captain America, Wakanda type of stuff. Because Western political correctness is like an octopus that has a firm grip on a narrative. Telling a story that sells starts with organic concepts. Classic storytelling is very tribal. Things that deal with a family or your tribe and sacrifice or protecting it or teaming up for an adventure or boy meets girls, which is a lot of Japanese stories as well, and what used to be Western stories, the standard stories that you don't have to go back that far to see. But then in the Western stories, you notice over the decades they slowly change from nationalist vibes and themes to globalists. And in the West, and in America, that happened very quickly. When they hear the idea for a story, the first thing they would do in somewhere like Hollywood would be go, okay, well, here's how we check the boxes. We throw in some diversity, and this woman's got to have more talking points, and there's got to be someone from the gay and someone from all these other groups. And what does it do? It's like, well, it fundamentally changes the story. People's motivations are different if they're different people. And the left seems to think on one hand people are fungible, but on the other hand these specific groups need to be represented to make what is just propaganda. And what that does to take away creativity from the story is it kills the story. It doesn't make sense. It's so jarring when you see a story with diversity in it where it doesn't belong. And if you watch American things, that's pretty much everything. Characters have to, unless you're like, what was the last one? Like Lord of the Rings from 25 years ago. Characters have to look like they belong together. And in Japanese art, they do. I was scrolling the movie sites last night when I went to go sail the high seas to find the South Park thing. Part 2, and I noticed the covers of the movies, and they have black films, Asian films, Latin films, and it's all that group of people. Then when I went looking for covers with all people who look like us, there would always be a token diversity hire on the cover. And once you see this, it starts to blow your mind when you just juxtapose these two things. Some groups get to tell organic, tribal, nationalist stories, but our groups don't. And it's bizarre when you actually start looking at these images and it's telling you as clearly as in black and white. In some stories, they always force diversity, and the audience does not want it. We want our people telling stories. You want to look at a story and see yourself represented. You want to see your tribe, because that, like, you don't sacrifice for strangers. Just kind of game theory 101 that's causing the West to collapse. What the movie covers would look like, and you've probably seen this, though it would be interesting, I was going to say for a long time, it would be interesting to start tracking when they started throwing in an affirmative action hire, where you see a cover, and there's it's just a bunch of, you look at the color of the skin of the people on covers, and maybe there's front covers with like 3 black faces and then 1 white or something else. But they must be pretty rare, because I didn't see any when I was scrolling. I'm sure they're there. They're just massively underrepresented, which is the issue. They're perfectly fine with allowing all groups to have their tribal families, except for Europeans. So Japanese stories are what Western stories used to be, in the sense that they were organic, based on human behavior, natural motivations, and not based on globalist propaganda. people are watching Japanese stories to see things that make sense, where the motivations match the character and everything just fits in because it's your own lived experience. A group of people all go on an adventure together, and they don't need any forced diversity. Only the West gets forced diversity. And the other thing that Hollywood will do is they'll have different releases for different countries, where they'll take out gay stuff for, I think, Africa and the Middle East kind of thing, or maybe China. They'll have a slight little, some scenes will be done differently if they think there's enough money in that market, except they don't offer you that option in the West to go, oh, hey, let us get the Middle Eastern version free of, some gay kiss in the background or something. So Japanese culture is a safe, high-trust society like the West used to be before the massive demographic changes in America of the 50s was, I don't know, maybe it was on the level of a Japan now. That kind of social cohesion and trust is probably, I mean, many other things were different, but the idea of like, actually, it probably was never at the level of Japan, where kids could walk to school or women could walk down streets with no worries, and people could pass out drunk, and their briefcases and their wallet and their cell phone would be right there. Like, it never in a million years did they think that like their wallet would be missing or something. It's just an entirely different culture. And people are looking at the West now and the stories they're telling that are open propaganda, and going to Japan, in some cases even Bollywood, and going, yeah, these are better stories because they don't have the same kind of political correctness that the West has. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all next episode.